The giant alien ship appeared over Earth without warning. It hung in the sky like a metal moon, silent and waiting. World leaders panicked. Military forces went on high alert, but no attack came. Instead, a message arrived on every screen on the planet. We come in peace. We are the Galactic Council. 3 days later, Captain Thomas Reed stood in a large white room, trying not to stare at the 5 aliens seated across from him. Each looked completely different from the others. One had blue skin with 4 arms. Another floated in a tank of green liquid. The tallest one had skin like tree bark and eyes that glowed yellow. Captain Reed said the alien in the center, who called himself Ambassador Krill. We have watched your planet for some time. Humans are interesting to us. Reed nodded politely. He had been chosen to represent Earth because of his calm nature and diplomatic skills. Inside, though, his heart raced. Your species has great potential, continued Krill. His voice sounded like rocks in a blender, but the translation device made his words clear. You adapt quickly. You solve problems in unusual ways. But you also take terrible risks. The alien to Krill's right waved a tentacle. We have seen your people climb mountains without safety equipment. We have watched you jump from high places with only cloth to slow your fall. You willingly eat foods that might kill you, just to experience new tastes. Reed smiled. We call those things sports, adventure, and cuisine. None of the aliens seemed amused. The Council has existed for 12,000 years, said Krill. We bring peace and technology to worthy species. We offer this to Earth now. Reed's eyes widened. This was more than anyone had hoped for. Access to advanced alien technology could solve Earth's biggest problems: disease, climate change, energy shortages. However, Krill continued, we have concerns about human behavior. Your recklessness might make you dangerous to the galactic community. The alien in the liquid tank bubbled loudly. The translation came through. Humans regularly do things that other species would consider suicide. Your entertainment often shows people barely surviving dangerous situations. You seem to enjoy risk. Reed thought carefully before answering. It's true that humans push boundaries. We explore. We test limits. But that's how we grow and learn. Krill's yellow eyes narrowed. Perhaps, or perhaps you will destroy yourselves and others with such attitudes. The room fell silent. Reed realized this first meeting wasn't going as well as he'd hoped. The tallest alien finally spoke. There may be a way to test the humans' readiness. Krill turned. You cannot mean Voros 9. I do, said the tall alien. If humans wish to join the Council, let them attempt what 17 other species failed to accomplish. The aliens began talking among themselves in sounds no human translator could handle. Reed waited patiently. Finally, Krill turned back to him. Captain Reed, we have a challenge for humanity. There is a planet called Voros 9. It has valuable resources, but is extremely dangerous. No species has successfully established a lasting colony there. What makes it so dangerous? Reed asked. Deadly temperature changes, toxic air, unpredictable gravity shifts that can crush buildings in seconds. The last species that tried lost 5,000 lives before giving up. Reed understood what was happening. They expected him to refuse, proving humans could be reasonable. Instead, he smiled. When can we start? The aliens stared at him in complete silence. Then Ambassador Krill said what Reed would later learn was the alien equivalent of a sigh. You see, this is exactly what we feared. News of the alien challenge spread across Earth like wildfire. Leaders argued. Scientists debated. But in the end, humanity decided to accept. They would try to colonize Voros 9, the planet that 17 alien species had failed to tame. Captain Reed stood before the World Council, explaining what they faced. Voros 9 has a day that lasts 63 Earth hours. During daylight, temperatures reach 180 degrees. At night, they drop to -120. The atmosphere contains elements that burn most lungs, and the gravity shifts without warning, sometimes doubling normal force in seconds. A council member raised her hand. Why would we accept such a challenge? It sounds impossible. Because the aliens think we can't do it, Reed replied simply. And because if we succeed, we gain access to their technology and knowledge. Think of what that means for Earth. The room buzzed with conversation. Finally, the head of the council spoke. How many people will you need? Just 20, said Reed. A small team has better chances than a large one. We need the right people, not many people. 3 weeks later, Reed met with the alien representatives again. Ambassador Krill seemed surprised to see him. Your leaders have agreed to this, Krill asked. They have, Reed said. We will send our team to Voros 9 next month. The alien in the liquid tank bubbled frantically. The translator spoke. This is madness. The Trill sent 5,000 of their best to Voros 9. Only 212 returned. The Bazani lost an entire generation of scientists. Reed nodded. We've studied the reports of previous attempts. We believe we've learned from their mistakes. Impossible, said the tall alien with glowing eyes. What could you possibly know that 17 advanced civilizations did not? Reed smiled. We know how to survive impossible situations. It's what humans do best. Krill made a sound that the translator didn't catch. Very well. We will provide transportation to Voros 9. We will also assign Observer Trell to your mission. He will record your attempt for the Council archives. You mean he'll record our failure, Reed said. None of the aliens denied it. Back on Earth, Reed met with his chosen team. They gathered in a large room filled with maps and models of Voros 9, based on information the aliens had provided. Each of you was selected because you're the best at what you do, Reed told them. Dr. Wells, you've helped humans live in the harshest environments on Earth. Commander Stone, you've managed space stations during critical failures. Jack, you've survived situations that should have killed you 10 times over. He continued around the room, highlighting each person's unique skills. The aliens think we're going to die, he said finally. They see this mission as proof that humans aren't ready for space. They call it suicide. Dr. Olivia Porter, the team's xenobiologist, raised her hand. And what do you call it, Captain? Reed looked at each face in turn. I call it Tuesday. The room erupted in laughter. The aliens don't understand us, Reed continued when the laughter died down. They don't know that humans have always done the impossible. We climbed the highest mountains. We dove to the deepest oceans. We flew when they said we couldn't fly. We went to the moon when they said we couldn't reach it. He pointed to the holographic image of Voros 9 floating above the center table. This planet has beaten 17 alien species, but they weren't human. We are. And we're going to make it our home. The room filled with cheers. Outside, Observer Trell watched through the window, wondering if he was documenting history or tragedy. The ship that would take them to Voros 9 was called Daedalus. It was an Earth vessel, but the aliens had helped improve it for the long journey. The 20 crew members spent 3 months training together before the mission began. Observer Trell watched them constantly. He was short with gray skin and large black eyes that missed nothing. At first, he stayed far away from the humans. By the second month, curiosity got the better of him. Why do you laugh when discussing dangerous parts of the mission? He asked Dr. Marcus Wells one day. Wells looked up from his work on environmental suits. Humor helps us deal with fear, he explained. When something scares us, we often joke about it. Trell made a note in his recording device. So you are afraid. Of course we're afraid, Wells said. We're not stupid. But fear doesn't stop humans. Sometimes it pushes us forward. Trell seemed confused by this idea. As launch day approached, each team member focused on their special area. Commander Eliza Stone studied maps of the planet's surface, looking for the safest landing spot. Jack Foster tested survival gear in chambers that simulated Voros 9's harsh conditions. Dr. Olivia Porter examined samples of the planet's toxic air, searching for ways to filter it. Technical Officer Ben Wilson worked on buildings that could withstand the gravity surges. The night before launch, Captain Reed found Trell watching the team's final dinner together. "You still think we're going to fail, don't you?" Reed asked. Trell turned his large eyes toward the human. 17 species failed before you. Many were more advanced than humans. More advanced technology doesn't always mean better survival skills. Reed said, "Humans have something special." "What is that?" Reed thought for a moment. "We're stubborn, and we're creative when things go wrong." "Those qualities exist in other species," Trell said. "Not like in humans," Reed replied. "You'll see." The next morning, the Daedalus launched from Earth. Millions watched as the ship rose into the sky, carrying humanity's hopes with it. The journey to Voros 9 would take 6 weeks. During the trip, the team continued to prepare. They ran simulations of everything that could go wrong. They practiced emergency procedures until they could do them in their sleep. They studied all the reports from the 17 failed attempts. The Bazani tried to build above ground. Commander Stone pointed out during one meeting. That was their first mistake. "And the Trill brought too much equipment they couldn't move quickly," added Jack. "When the first gravity surge hit, they lost it all." The team found mistakes in every previous attempt. But would they do better? No one knew for sure. 4 weeks into the journey, Technical Officer Wilson discovered something interesting in the data. "The gravity surges follow a pattern," he told the others excitedly. "It's complex, but it's there. If we can predict them, we might have a chance to prepare." Observer Trell watched this discovery with interest. No previous species had noticed this pattern. Perhaps humans did see things differently. As they entered the final week of travel, Captain Reed called everyone together. "Soon we'll reach Voros 9, he said. "The moment we land, the real challenge begins. The aliens think this is a suicide mission. The Council is probably already preparing their official report about our failure." He looked at each team member in turn. "Let's prove them wrong." The ship sped through space toward the deadly planet. On board the Council's main station, Ambassador Krill and the other leaders watched the humans' progress with growing curiosity. None of them expected the humans to succeed. But all of them wondered, what if they did? The Daedalus entered Voros 9's atmosphere with a shudder that rattled every bolt in the ship. Captain Reed gripped his seat as warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Landing zone in sight," Commander Stone announced, her voice steady despite the violent shaking. "It's not looking good, Captain." Through the view screen, Reed saw their planned landing area. It was a flat plain they had chosen from orbital scans, but now a massive storm raged across it, with winds strong enough to flip their ship. "Find another spot," Reed ordered. Stone changed course, heading toward a valley between 2 rocky hills. "This will have to do," she said. The ship landed hard, bouncing twice before settling. For a moment, everyone sat in silence, just breathing. They had made it to Voros 9. That small victory didn't last long. "Captain," Technical Officer Wilson shouted from his station. "Gravity surge coming in 30 seconds. Reed hit the ship's comm system. Everyone secure all equipment. Gravity surge incoming." The crew rushed to tie down everything loose. They had barely finished when the surge hit. The gravity doubled instantly. People fell to the floor, gasping under the sudden weight. Equipment that wasn't properly secured crashed down, breaking into pieces. Dr. Porter crawled to her monitoring station. "The air outside is even more toxic than we expected," she reported, her voice strained from the heavy gravity. "Our standard filters won't work." The gravity surge lasted 5 minutes. When it ended, Reed took stock of their situation. 3 crew members were injured, half their supplies were damaged, and they hadn't even left the ship yet. Observer Trell floated near the ceiling, his species apparently unaffected by the gravity changes. "An unfortunate start," he noted, recording everything. Previous expeditions also faced difficulties upon arrival. Jack Foster limped over to Reed, holding his arm where a fallen storage container had struck him. "Captain, we need to get our base set up before nightfall. Temperature will drop to deadly levels in about 6 hours." Reed nodded grimly. "Everyone who can move, suit up. We're going outside." Their first steps onto Voros 9 were cautious. The air outside was a strange orange color, and the ground felt spongy beneath their boots. In the distance, lightning flashed constantly in the storm they had avoided. "Move quickly," Reed ordered. "Wilson, where's the safest spot for our base?" Wilson consulted his scanner. "There's a depression about 50 meters east. It might offer some protection from the weather and gravity surges." The team began setting up their base, using the special materials they had brought from Earth. Progress was slow. The toxic air seeped through tiny cracks in their suits, making eyes water and lungs burn. 2 more crew members collapsed from breathing problems and had to be taken back to the ship. By nightfall, they had only finished half of the planned base. Reed looked at the incomplete structure with worry. It wouldn't withstand the extreme cold of night. "Everyone back to the ship," he ordered reluctantly. As they returned, another gravity surge hit without warning. This one was stronger than the first. One crew member, a young engineer named Miller, was crushed when a piece of equipment fell on him. He died instantly. That night, huddled in the ship with the heating systems straining against the brutal cold outside, the team held a short memorial for Miller. Morale was low. Reality was setting in. Voros 9 was just as deadly as the aliens had warned. Observer Trell watched silently as Captain Reed moved from person to person, offering quiet words of encouragement. In his report that night, Trell noted, "Day 1 casualties. 1 dead, 5 injured. Minimal progress on base construction. Expected mission failure within 3 days." The Council received his report with satisfaction. The humans were failing, just as expected. It was only a matter of time. Morning came to Voros 9 with a blinding red sun that heated the air rapidly. Inside the ship, Captain Reed called his team together. "Yesterday was bad," he said simply. "Today will be better because we'll learn from our mistakes." Dr. Porter stepped forward. "I've been analyzing the air samples. The toxic elements change concentration throughout the day. There's a 3-hour window when the air is almost breathable." "Almost isn't good enough," Commander Stone pointed out. "No, but I can create better filters now that I understand the pattern," Porter replied. "We can work outside longer during that window." Technical Officer Wilson had news too. "I've tracked the gravity surges. They follow the planet's 3 moons. When all 3 align, we get the strongest surges. I can predict them now with about 80% accuracy." Reed nodded. "Good. What else?" Jack Foster, the survival specialist, had been thinking all night. "We're building wrong," he said. "The other aliens built up. We need to build down." "Underground?" Reed asked. "Exactly," Foster said. "On Earth, desert people build homes partly underground to stay cool during the day and warm at night. The same principle should work here. Plus, it would protect us from gravity surges." The team quickly adjusted their plans. Using the ship's equipment, they began digging into the spongy ground. To their surprise, the soil just a few feet down was rich in minerals that hardened when exposed to air. "This is perfect building material," Dr. Wells said excitedly. "The previous species might have missed this because they didn't dig deep enough." By midday, working during Porter's safe air window with improved filters, they had created a large underground space. They reinforced it with the hardened soil and materials from their ship. As the deadly afternoon heat approached, the team moved into their new shelter. The temperature outside climbed to 180 degrees. Inside their underground base, it stayed below 90. Hot, but survivable. "The next gravity surge should hit in about an hour," Wilson warned. When it came, the underground shelter held firm. The gravity increased, making everyone feel heavy and tired, but nothing collapsed. No one was hurt. Observer Trell floated through the shelter, recording everything. Interesting solution, he admitted. No previous expedition attempted underground structures. Humans have lived in caves since our earliest days, Dr. Wells explained. When technology fails, we go back to basics. Day by day, the human colony grew. They expanded their underground network. They created a system to collect water from the brief but violent rainstorms. Dr. Porter found a way to filter the toxic air more effectively, allowing longer work periods outside. There were still problems. Equipment failed in the harsh conditions. Food supplies ran low. 2 more crew members died when they were caught outside during an unexpected acid rain shower. But unlike previous expeditions, the humans didn't give up. They adapted. On the 40th day, Observer Trell sent his report to the Council. Human colony has survived longer than any previous attempt. They continue to expand their underground structures. They have begun growing food in protected chambers. Most surprising, they appear to be studying the native plants, which all other species considered too dangerous to approach. Ambassador Krill read the report with disbelief. They should have failed by now, he told the Council. No species can survive on Voros 9. Yet they are surviving, said the tall alien with glowing eyes. Perhaps we underestimated these humans. Back on Voros 9, Captain Reed stood at the entrance of their underground colony, watching the strange alien sunset. Despite the losses, despite the daily struggle, he felt a growing sense of accomplishment. They were proving it could be done. We're going to make it, he said quietly. Behind him, Observer Trell made another note in his recording device. For the first time, he was beginning to believe the human might be right. 3 months had passed on Voros 9. The human colony had grown into a network of underground rooms and tunnels. 17 of the original 20 crew members were still alive. They had even started growing a strange native plant that Dr. Porter discovered could be eaten after proper treatment. Then the colony's sensors detected something massive approaching. It's a storm, Technical Officer Wilson announced grimly. But not like anything we've seen before. The team gathered around the display screen. A huge swirling mass covered nearly half the planet and was moving directly toward them. The previous species called it the Great Cleansing, Observer Trell said quietly. It comes once every local year. No expedition has ever survived it. Captain Reed studied the data. How long until it hits us? 2 days, Wilson replied. Reed turned to his team. Options. Commander Stone spoke first. We could return to the ship and try to fly above the storm. The winds would tear the ship apart, Wilson said, shaking his head. Jack Foster had been thinking deeply. What if we go deeper? Dig down further than we've gone before? Dr. Wells frowned. The ground becomes too hard at 20 meters down. Our equipment can't break through it. The room fell silent as the reality sank in. After all their progress, after surviving when no one thought they could, they now faced something they couldn't overcome. Then Dr. Porter looked up from her analysis station. The storm produces enormous electrical energy, she said slowly. What if we use that? Use it how? Reed asked. We build conductors, tall metal rods above ground. They attract the lightning and channel it down. We could use that power to run stronger digging equipment. It was a dangerous plan. Someone would need to stay above ground during the early stages of the storm to make sure the conductors worked properly. I'll do it, Reed said immediately. Captain, that's too risky, Commander Stone protested. It's my responsibility, Reed insisted. That night, Reed received a transmission from the Council. Ambassador Krill's face appeared on the screen. Captain Reed, Krill said, our observations show the Great Cleansing Storm approaching your position. We are ordering Observer Trell to return immediately. We also strongly advise you to evacuate. We're staying, Reed replied. Krill's alien features showed something like frustration. This is foolish even by human standards. The storm will destroy everything on the surface. No technology can withstand it. We have a plan, Reed said simply. A plan. Against the Great Cleansing. Krill seemed shocked. Captain, 17 species have faced this storm. All failed. They weren't human, Reed answered. After the transmission ended, Observer Trell approached Reed. I have received orders to leave, he said. Reed nodded. The Council's ship will arrive tomorrow to pick you up. Trell was quiet for a moment. I believe I will stay. That's against your orders, Reed pointed out. Yes, Trell agreed, but I want to see what happens. The next day, the colony worked frantically to prepare. They built 20 conductor towers on the surface. They sealed their underground chambers as tightly as possible. They moved their most important equipment to the deepest level. By nightfall, the edge of the storm had reached them. The sky turned black. Lightning flashed so frequently it seemed like daylight. The wind howled loud enough to be heard even deep underground. Captain Reed and Technical Officer Wilson stood by the main conductor control panel. Outside, the full fury of the storm was about to hit. If this doesn't work, Wilson began. It will work, Reed said firmly. The first massive lightning bolt struck the tallest conductor tower. The energy meter spiked dramatically. Then another hit and another. The underground lights flickered as the system absorbed more power than it was designed to handle. It's too much, Wilson shouted over the noise. But Reed was smiling. No such thing as too much power. Redirect it to the deep drilling equipment. Now's our chance. As the greatest storm Voros 9 could produce raged overhead, the humans channeled its fury into their machines and began digging deeper than any species had gone before. For 3 days, the great cleansing storm raged on Voros 9. The conductor towers channeled lightning into the colony's systems until 2 of them melted from the intense heat. The ground shook constantly. Gravity surges came one after another as the storm disrupted the planet's natural patterns. Deep underground, the humans worked in shifts, pushing their drilling equipment to its limits. When one machine broke, they fixed it with parts from another. When the tunnels began to collapse, they reinforced them with the hardened soil they had discovered. No one slept more than 2 hours at a time. Everyone was pushed to their breaking point, but they kept going. On the 4th day, Captain Reed was checking the deepest tunnel when Dr. Porter called him on the radio. Captain, you need to see this. Reed hurried to Porter's research station. She pointed excitedly at her scanner. We've broken through to a cave system. And there's breathable air down there. It seemed impossible, but the readings were clear. Beneath the hard layer that had stopped previous expeditions was a network of caves with an atmosphere humans could breathe without filters. The storm is ending, Commander Stone reported. We can send an exploration team down as soon as it's safe. When the storm finally passed, the surface of Voros 9 was transformed. 3 of their buildings had been completely destroyed. The conductor towers were twisted ruins, but the underground colony had survived. Reed led the first team into the caves. What they found amazed them. The caves were filled with glowing crystals that gave off light and heat. Strange plants grew in patches. Small creatures scurried away from their flashlights. This is why the planet has value, Observer Trell said, recording everything. These crystals are energy sources more powerful than anything the Council has found before. And we're the first to discover them, Reed said. Within weeks, the humans had expanded their colony into the caves. They built living spaces where they could breathe freely without suits or filters. They studied the native plants and animals, finding several that were safe to eat. The crystals provided all the energy they needed. 6 months after landing on Voros 9, Captain Reed sent a message to Earth. Colony established. Voros 9 is now our home. The news spread quickly across the galaxy. The Council was forced to call an emergency meeting. Ambassador Krill looked stunned as he addressed the human representatives who had traveled to the Council station. It seems we underestimated your species, he admitted. Not only have you survived on Voros 9, but you have thrived. You have accomplished what 17 advanced civilizations could not. Observer Trell presented his final report to the Council. Humans possess unique abilities that make them valuable to the galactic community. They do not see problems as insurmountable. They view failure as temporary. They adapt quickly and think creatively under pressure. The tall alien with glowing eyes stepped forward. Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges. Back on Voros 9, the colony celebrated the news. In just 6 months, they had grown to include more humans who volunteered to join the original team. They had built a stable community that was no longer just fighting to survive, but beginning to explore the planet further. Captain Reeves stood at the entrance to their underground city, looking out at the harsh landscape they had conquered. "What's next?" Commander Stone asked, joining him. Reed smiled. "I hear there's another impossible planet in the Andromeda sector. The Council has written it off as too volcanic for settlement." Stone laughed. "Sounds like another challenge." On the Council station, a new term entered the Galactic Dictionary: too human, meaning to succeed where all logical analysis predicted failure. Throughout the galaxy, species that had once looked down on humans began to wonder what other impossible things these strange, determined creatures might achieve. The suicide mission had become humanity's greatest triumph.